Hi, welcome to our talk about our game subscription on Patreon. We're Sokpop Collective. We're a video game collective slash game dev boy band. We are 4 game makers based in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And pictured from left to right, we're Ruben, who's sitting over there, Timon, who's standing next to me,
Hello.
me, who's standing over here, and Tom, who's sitting over there. We make a lot of small games. In fact, last year we released 26 games in total. We release these as part of our subscription service on Patreon. What that means is that people can subscribe to get a new game made by us every 2 weeks. We started this Patreon to make money with releasing cool small games so that we can become sustainable in the long run. In this talk, we'll explain how we got started, how we managed to release a new game every 2 weeks, how we combine it with working on other projects, and how our Patreon grew. To quickly give you an idea what the 26 games are like, we'll show them to you quickly in this video. Okay, gotta snipe the start though. Okay, there we go.
Sokpop.
All right, I'm gonna make it a little bit faster. There we go. Yeah, we gotta go a little bit fast because there's like less minutes in this talk than games we made last year. So, oh no. All right, next.
All right, so now for some Patreon background. So for the Patreon, you get one game every 2 weeks for $3 a month. However, the games are also available on our favorite website, itch.io, for $3 each as well. The Patreon roughly works similar to a magazine subscription, where if you subscribe, you only get the new games and the current games, so you wouldn't get our entire backlog of 30 games. Right, most of the games are designed to be finished within a single playthrough, taking roughly about 50 minutes to 1 hour to complete. Right now, we have about 1,000 patrons, totaling for almost $4,000 a month. However, this is not our only source of income. We also do some freelance work and some commission work, as well as releasing some bigger games that are not released for the Patreon. We spend about half our time on the Patreon. Right, so this should provide some context around the Patreon. And now we'll discuss how Sokpop was formed. Yeah.
Yeah, so we met each other roughly around 2014 as young game jammers through mutual friends and Twitter. And we often would do game jams at each other's places, especially the Lunumdare one. And that's basically how we got to really know each other, like the 4 of us. And at the end of 2015, we wanted to take things more seriously and spend more time making games, basically go pro, right? So there was one big obstacle in the way, which was that we saw that it was getting increasingly harder for game makers and games to stand out from the crowd, as a lot of you must be familiar with. So we decided to band together under the Sokpop name as a collective, so not like a traditional studio. What we would do, we would basically function without being too hands involved with each other's games, and would use our combined forces to be more visible. And yeah, like that, we basically started making a bunch of small, mostly jam games, and releasing them under the Sokpop name.
Yeah, and by making all these small games and posting GIFs of it on Twitter, we quickly gained a following on there. Tweets like this one, and this one. And Twitter became very important for us. For a long time, it was basically our main way to communicate and be visible to the people that liked our work. And over time, we actually started influencing each other as well and developed a similar style, I think, with lots of procedural animations, cute physics, and funny interactions. So yeah, after doing this Sokpop thing quite casually for a couple of years, mostly just running a Twitter account, and sometimes doing showcases, we were getting to a critical point. We needed money. Maybe some of you recognize this problem. So in order to cope with this problem, we noticed we had two things. We had a dedicated, albeit a small following, and we were good at making small games fast. But we had no real idea how to turn that into cold hard cash.
Yeah, so we tried to figure out what maybe could work for us. The first thing we thought about was maybe turning our small projects into game dev tutorials, because that's something a lot of people asked us. But yeah, we really quickly found out we don't really want to make tutorials, we want to make games. So we decided not to try this. Then another idea was to make remix versions of existing games. So we would basically make them Sokpop versions, but nobody really wanted to give us their source code, so that didn't really work out.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Then we decided maybe we can try making an album, like a music album, but instead of sound and music, there is small games instead. And we actually tried that. We released Bamboo EP, which is a collection of small bamboo-themed games. And it really didn't work out too well. It didn't really sell enough to try something like that. But that was our first time really experimenting with selling a commercial game.
Yeah. Well, and then someone said to us, well, you're making all these games. Why don't you just sell them? And well, we thought the games were a bit too small, and generally they were unfinished as well, to even consider selling them. But I guess we could see how we could just finish up some rough edges and maybe try to release them some way or another. And then we found out about Patreon. So for those of you who don't know what Patreon is, it's a platform where you can support artists on a monthly basis. And when we saw this, we realized that we could use this to create a subscription model by simply giving those supporters games as a monthly thank you gift.
So we decided, let's try out this Patreon thing.
Yeah, let's just do it.
And at this point, we thought, let's just set up a page really quickly and get started. But we kind of underestimated all the work that goes into setting it all up. In the end, it took us about half a year of part-time work. And here's a short list of things that we needed to do. We needed to set up an entire subscription page. This has nothing in it, so that was still pretty easy. Then we needed to make a nice banner, a cool introduction video, a cool piece of introduction text, goals for us all to achieve together, those are in the bottom left, and tiers. So you can get the game for $3, but for example, you can also get pay $10, and then you also get the source code, so you can make remake version of our games.
Yeah.
We added Discord integration, which became an important tool for us to stay in touch with our community. And then there was a bunch of different thank you texts, FAQs, help files. And finally, we built an integration between itch.io and Patreon so that all the patrons could actually download the keys they are eligible for.
Yeah.
So that's a short recap of the stuff that we needed to do.
Right. So another thing we realized is, in order to make this work, we kind of had to shift our focus from Twitter to Patreon. Yeah, and this was a hard decision for us to do because at this point we became somewhat addicted to retweets and getting followers. Yeah, someone mentioned that we were a bit of a GIF factory at this point instead of a game studio. Yeah. Yeah, but in order to really do this, we kind of had to guide everyone to the Patreon instead. So we did this by becoming sellouts and putting links in tweets, and there's a big bubble on our website.
And in more tweets, so when something really blew up, here's our Patreon.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the final thing we did, like the final thing was the only thing we were actually good at, which was make a bunch of games. So we made 8 games as a buffer in case anything would happen where we couldn't make a game for the Patreon. We would have these lined up.
Yeah, so everything was pretty much lined up, and then the plan was that everyone makes one game every 2 months. We work on it for around 2 weeks, so it's like taking a jam game, then polishing that up, and then we have 6 weeks left to work on other stuff like bigger projects, freelance work, etc. And it seemed like a great plan, so we decided, let's go.
Good plan. So yeah, we launched on January the 17th with 2 games. Bambini, which is a game about bees, and Yut, a game about trash. And the launch was quite important for us because we think it can really set a tone. So yeah, we decided to give everyone these 2 games instead of 1 as a starter bonus, and started to look more like a real deal. And based on how other Patreons were doing, we expected to reach about $100 by the end of the month, which was exceeded to, it was $500, which was nice.
Yeah, it was really nice, so we decided, let's start releasing more games.
Yeah, let's do that.
So Timon made Dr. Umgeboom's School of Life. I made New Colony.
Yeah.
Timon made another game called King of the Sandcastle, where basically for the first time we found out how fun it is to let our patrons fight each other.
Yeah.
Then Tom made Muras, and Ruben made the aptly named Dino games.
Yeah, there are dinosaurs in there.
All right, so then it was already April, because time really kind of flies when you release a new game every 2 weeks. And we noticed a couple of things. The first thing being that we saw that the growth started plateauing. We had $500 in the first month, then $650, then $900, and then a little bit less than $900. So the first Patreon started leaving, and we were a bit worried that maybe the Patreon became old news. And then it also turned out making the games didn't really take 2 weeks. It took more like 4 weeks. It wasn't just polishing up a jam game. So things weren't looking too great at this point, but we weren't going to stop. So yeah, let's make some more games.
Yeah, just make some more games. Right. So Aaron made Driftwood, and I made Hoko Poco, and then someone made Tomscape, which is an homage to RuneScape. And then it's May, and all of a sudden there is a Polygon video made by Brian Gilbert. It's that person. And the video really blew up for us. What happened is it basically doubled our patrons in income. As you can see in this graph, this is kind of what happened. And we thought that growth halted because our Patreon became old news. Nobody talked about it anymore. It's a few months in. But in reality, there were still tons of people that haven't even heard about it and just needed a way to find out about us. And next to that, we think a lot of people were kind of skeptical, like, can they keep up with this breakneck schedule? Yeah, we're 5 months in now, and I think we kind of proved that this was working, and people started trusting, that they would get a new game every 2 weeks.
Yeah, so that was really cool and very motivating. So, hey, we went back to making games. What a thought. All right, so Ruben made Kamer. I made Huts. Diamond made Zoo Packs. Tom made Botanique. And then Ruben made Spider Ponds. And then I made a game called Llama Villa, which the tagline was, it's literally The Sims, but with llamas.
Yeah, you laugh now, but it was kind of annoying because from this point forward, patrons kept asking about everything, but with llamas. And we said no, and then they took the source code and just replaced sprites with llamas. Right.
So then there was quite an important game for us, and it was a game made by Timon called Simulant. It's a card-based god game where you fulfill mankind's wishes, like blessing them with fish or spreading the plague. Simulant, like we said, we also sell the game separately on itch.io, and Simulant sold quite a lot. Here's a graph. The red one is a bad Patreon game, and it's sold separately on itch.io. So it's about $50. Then green is like $1,000. That's a good game. Yeah. And then I guess Simulant purple, which makes it 10 really good games.
Yeah.
So it made about 10K in 1 month, US dollars, which is pretty good for a game made in 4 weeks. So we we were really happy. So let's talk a bit about our rules within Sokpop about splitting our income, because that became very relevant at this point.
Yeah.
So for the Patreon games, what we do is we just split the Patreon and itch.io income equally, so everybody gets 25% after we spend it on office rent. This is not our office, by the way. Ours has more plans. And then for non-Patreon games, the rules are different. There, at least 5% goes to Sokpops. You can choose not to spend more of your own percentage, and we use that to spend on events like this, and submission costs for events, and nice hats and caps. So yeah, that's our rules regarding splitting income.
Let's make some more games.
Let's do it.
Tom made Hoppa, and then Ruben made Sokoloco, which is a train simulator. And then it's September, and at this point we looked back at some statistics, and we found out that less than 50% of the patrons were actually downloading the games, which is kind of weird. Yeah. So we were looking up why is this happening, and we found out there are two reasons. One of them is people were downloading the games in bursts. So since the games were so short, what a lot of the people were doing is just download a few of them and play all of them in one evening. And the other reason is maybe a bit more interesting. We found out that a lot of them didn't support us for the games, but also for us, who we are. And I think with the amazing amount of games that come out nowadays, people start realizing that video games are being made by humans and not robots. And maybe how people will follow their favorite musicians, they will also start following their favorite game designers. Found out if they have a nice dog or cat. So inspired by that, we started making videos with us in it, so people could get to know us a little bit better. And we talked about why we made the game, what was our inspiration, etc. Oh, and another thing that happened is we reached our halfway goal, which made us very happy, as you might be able to see. We did a little live stream.
Yeah, and then came infamous game number 20, the game we don't talk about. It's oh crap. It was more like, oh crap, we have no more games to release. So we ran out the buffer we talked about at the start. So we had the 8 games, but because sometimes we restarted or sometimes making the games longer, we basically had no games lying around, and we had no time to make a new one because we were busy with other projects. Yeah. So this was the first time where we needed to figure out a solution, really. And we had this old game lying around called Oh Crab, which we made together in 2017. And we decided, well, we basically have to release this because we have nothing else. And we thought, oh no, the patrons are going to be really mad. And it turned out, oh, it's not too bad. They understood that we didn't sleep for 8 months. So it was okay. It was actually a really interesting moment because we realized...
the next time this would happen, we were screwed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we were basically forced to finish every game we started now, which put a little bit more pressure on us. But it's also nice because that would really make sure that we don't spend too much time making these Patreon games. Yeah. And we also realized, well, maybe a bad idea always has something good. Like if you make a Patreon game and about halfway through you're like, I'm not sure what to do with this. And there's always something you can zoom in on that will make it fun. Yeah. And even in the case that people really didn't like one of the games, they would realize, well, I paid about $1.50 for this. And yeah, I'll get a brand new different thing in 2 weeks, which will probably not be Oh Crab.
Probably not.
Probably not.
And they weren't. This is Visser, made by Aran. And then I made Dolar. Tom made Frog Struggles. Frog Struggles. And then Aaron made Skidlock, which is a game about cycling very fast through a city. Don't get hit. And then it's already December, and the year is almost gone by. It goes really fast. And at this point, some of the small games started to become big. So what we did is a few of the Patreon games that we and/or the people who played it especially liked, we started developing them into bigger versions and basically doing full releases of them. And I think this is an interesting workflow since the patron games they are actually minimum viable products, or we call them small versions. And with this, we create some basic income while doing this, and we can test the game design of the game, but also the commercial viability. So, for example, with Simulant, I legit thought that the game sucked. I didn't like it at all. But then the people who played it loved it, and especially YouTubers did, which generated a lot of visibility for it. So I knew that if I would make a bigger version, it would definitely do at least something. So there wasn't a big leap of faith anymore for me to do this project. Yeah. And while we were working on bigger versions, of course, we released some more games. So
Ruben made Kraken Scourge, and then the final game of the year I made, it's called Clutch Ball. And yeah, that's all. Before you know it, we released 26 games in 1 year.
yeah,
And I think our biggest accomplishment was not getting burned out. We were really scared this would happen, as releasing a game every 2 weeks creates a lot of pressure. But we tried to take our rest in the evenings and weekends as much as we could. And we helped each other really out by working in the same space and talking about the games a lot. We have a weekly meeting where we try to be really professional about everything, but it's 9 out of 10 times it's just us chilling in the sun. And I think that's really nice. Like, we really helped each other a lot that way. And then we also tried to stick to our own rules. Like the first rule we had was like make the game in 2 weeks. Well, it turned out that really didn't work. But once we had the 4 weeks rule, we really kept to that and make sure that you're not constantly in this sort of high pressure mode of working. And then you have these 4 weeks to work a little bit more chill on your big project.
Yeah.
So that was basically that. Now for some future and some challenges that we're still facing with the Patreon.
Yeah. So this is our graph at the moment. So for the last couple of months, we had a quite steady increase of about $200 a month. But I'm not sure if you can see this, but every time there's this little spike, it starts declining after, and right before that happens, there's another spike. And I tried to draw it, but I don't think you can read it that well. But every time it has a big reason why that spike was there. And every spike has a totally different event to it. So we are not sure if these events will keep popping up, or we're basically out of control.
Yeah, a lot of these events always seemed like they were out of our control, and they just popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, just random. And then we want to reach the purple line, which is $5,000 a month, which will really cover almost all expenses that we have now at the moment. And then another thing we do is we release some bigger projects, hopefully.
Yeah, so separately from the Patreon, Tom is working on Burn Band. I'm working on a bigger version of Skidlocked, and Ruben is working on a bigger version of Soko Loco. And the question is, will these games do well, especially the Patreon games? Because if they do, that would really establish this workflow for us where we have this sort of minimum viable product and then work on it more and then sell that. So I think that would be really cool to see.
Yeah.
And then, I think that's going to be nice.
Yeah. At this point, we've already released 32 games. This is our latest one called Card Kids. We hope we've given you some insights about how we've run our Patreon. Maybe you'll even consider doing your own small game subscription. I think we'd love to see more people do it. Yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or via email or in real life. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Aaron and Timon. We actually have time for 1 or 2 questions. There's mics over there. So if you have any questions for Timon or Aaron right now, you can come up. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks, guys. Great talk. Do you have any advice for keeping small games like this narrowly scoped and not sort of getting lost? Even if you have a month, I imagine that you could have an opportunity to really dig into mechanics or art or something deeper. How do you maintain a consistent level of polish without going overboard?
So the question was, how do we keep our scope small so that the games don't become too big to make in 4 weeks?
Yeah, well, in our case, since we're this collective, say you were having too big of a scope and we do this weekly meeting outside in the sun, the other 3 of us will get angry at you and be like, no, don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's how we do it.
Kind of how it goes, and also we try to start with the base first, and then just keep adding stuff that would make sense.
Yeah, at some point we're like, all right, so you have 1 week left. Try to
wrap it up.
Wrap up at least like the full game loop, and then you can always polish some things in the end in your final week.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Tanner. I really enjoyed the talk. It was cool. One thing I wanted to ask is that you guys mentioned not having burnout, and you also mentioned your 4-week cycles. Is that based on like a 40-hour work week, or do you just kind of work until stuff gets done?
Right. So the question was that
if we work a 40-hour work week, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Like pretty much, I'd say most of us are at the office from 10 to 6, but not all the time is spent working. So yeah, I think that's based on that.
Yeah.
Sometimes more, sometimes less.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Avera. It was a great talk, by the way. Oh, sorry.
We'll do both.
What?
Yes.
Cool. I was just wondering if you guys set that guideline for once you come up with an idea and you start working on it, you have to finish it. How do you avoid getting stuck on those games and feeling kind of burnt out over them?
So how do we avoid getting stuck on the games when you have these guidelines? I think actually it happens sometimes where with a game you're like, after 3 weeks of working on it, then you're like, well, I'm kind of done with it. But at this point, we basically don't have really any other option. So we basically have to finish it. Yeah. And then I think a lot of those cases where it happened, then afterwards we were still pretty happy with those games.
Yeah.
So like maybe like at that point, like for example, this game released it a couple of weeks ago. I was
this
like,
one. Oh.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So I was like, not sure if it's any good, but now I'm like, that's pretty fun. Like people liked it. So.
Well, I think what we do is we play test it a lot with friends, and then you'll notice, all right, so this thing is what they like. This thing is fun, and then the other thing, which I thought was going to be fun, is stupid. So I'll just kick it out.
Kick it out.
Yeah.
Right.
The 4 of you mentioned that all 4 of your styles kind of converged into the Sokpop style. Did each one of you bring something different? Like someone had the animation, someone had the physics, or was it kind of like one person had it?
So if our style was like the question is if our style is the combined forces of us
combined
4
efforts.
Yeah.
Or so,
I don't know. I think Tom really Tom has always had super cool colors, and that's kind of really inspired me.
Yeah, I think when you really look at it closely, we all do have our own strengths.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are so many things that we've learned from each other, and I think at some point, Ruben and Tom were talking about how you do knees on legs, like
on procedural animation.
Yeah, and then
legs.
And I did that at the same point as well. We're like, well, knees.
Yeah,
they're great.
nice.
Yeah.
Knees.
Thank you.
It's the bee's knees.
Yeah. Right.
Last 2 questions.
Yeah, I'm curious how much of your guys' time is spent on like the boilerplate of like the game development and the distribution and stuff in like the 4 weeks that you spend on a game.
Right. So the question is, how much time do we spend in that 4-week cycle on promoting and marketing materials, etc. Right?
Yeah, and just on like some of the like parts of like preparing a game to be launched and stuff rather than developing the game.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is quite simple. It just takes 1 full day.
Yeah, it's like roughly one full day. We make the video takes like an afternoon, and then
Making the video, doing
The
there's actually a long list in our Trello board that explains everything you have to do.
yeah. So that's like a full day.
But it's not very fun to talk about. It's like, make a Mac build, make sure that this setting is. Yeah.
Don't think about it.
Yes.
All right. one more question.
Hey,
Hi.
one of the things I love about your guys' games is like, yeah, that you have this like style that you have as a group, and I'm curious how much of like a reusable like code base and like tool sets and assets that you use from game to game. Like I am assuming because you have this like consistent style now, you probably have some stuff that you can start with and not have to like build literally everything from scratch every time.
Yeah. So how much of our assets are shared between like different projects?
Yeah, and just like in general, how much you reuse them from project to project.
I think it's less than you would think it would be. Normally what I do is like I think about which game had a certain thing and then try to like find the script, which doesn't really work well. I don't know how you do it.
Sometimes I share code with Ruben, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But like I think it's mostly code because like sometimes Ruben takes palettes from other games, right? Oh. Okay. No is what he said. But no, it's a lot less than.
Yeah, to some degree, obviously, and then where there's a lot of stuff we do over and over again.
It's mostly about I think the techniques that we reuse, and then the techniques itself are not that much code, or it's always a little bit different.
But the legs, we always do the legs from scratch because you get the unique walk cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. I think that's it. Right.